Hi, and welcome to What's New in Jenkins LTS. And this time it's 2.346.1. My name is Darren Pope. I'm a developer advocate at CloudBees. And along with me, just like always, if I can find him, I have Mark Waite. Mark, how are you doing?
Great, Darren. How are you?
Good. We're doing this a little bit earlier today because when we normally do it at 4:30 Eastern. Thank you for adjusting. I meant to do that. Tell you that earlier. Normally we do it a little bit later in the day, but I have some other meetings this afternoon, so we moved it up to at least East Coast time, lunchtime.
Thank you.
Which for you, Mark, is even better. It's 10 a.m., so
it is.
You still have the whole day in front of you.
I'm proud to note that my grandchildren that are staying with me at the house are relatively quiet at the moment, so we're hoping for good happenings today.
Are they still asleep?
No, not at all. They're busy. I've intentionally distracted them, but thanks very much for going a little earlier today. Works great.
Yeah. Okay. So yesterday, 2.346.1.
Yesterday we released 2.346.1, but before we do that, Darren, I have to do a side trip. Everyone, Darren Pope received an award from the Continuous Delivery Foundation as the 2022 Continuous Enthusiast. Congratulations, Darren. That was a wonderful and well-deserved award. Thanks for your videos. Thanks for all that you do for continuous delivery, for continuous integration, for concepts and ideas, and for the things that matter to me like Jenkins. Very grateful for all those things. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. And to everybody, thanks for giving me lots of content to produce. Which, by the way, if you ever have any ideas, reach out to me on Twitter. Actually, do I still have I think I have mine. Yeah. So I have my Twitter handle's sitting right underneath me. Mark, you didn't do your Twitter handle, but you can fix that.
No, I'm at Marky Waite. Yeah.
Marky Waite. Anyway, the release yesterday, but it wasn't just a release yesterday.
It was not. That's right. So yesterday was rather distinctive. It's been quite a while since the last time we did something as dramatic as this. Yesterday, we released Jenkins 2.346.1, a long-term support release, the first in a series of releases. But we simultaneously released Jenkins 2.332.4, the last in the preceding LTS releases. And yesterday, in an uncommon event, we released Jenkins 2.357, the weekly release. Now, why 3 releases in one day? Because all 3 of those releases included security advisories. And so in order to not disrupt users, we made sure that the new LTS has the security fixes. But if they weren't quite ready to adopt the new LTS, the security team made sure that the last LTS got the security fixes. And for users that are running the Jenkins weekly, they also got the security fixes. So 3 releases, one day, and choose your release line based on your needs.
And the other thing that was a little weird, but not really weird, is the weekly was held for a day as well. That way, it was just one release day. So.
Right. Usually, we would release weekly on a Tuesday. And anytime we do a security release, so that we don't inadvertently disclose a vulnerability before releasing the fix, we do a coincident release of weekly and LTS on those times when we release a core security fix.
And I'm fixing your lower third because we're sort of breaking our rules right now.
Oh.
Let's talk about what an LTS is.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't talked about that because that's something, because we can't assume that everybody's watched us. I need to go back and figure out how many of these we've done. Like I need to go do the math. It would be easy to do. I just haven't done it yet. Oh, wait. Bring him on. Just say hey. Come here. Come here.
Okay, come here.
She can't.
Hey. I'm not sure she'll ever go away now. She's adorable. This is my granddaughter.
That's okay.
Wave, sweetie.
Hi.
Okay, now I need you to go because Grandpa's got to talk. All right.
Bye-bye.
Go close the door. Okay, sorry.
There we go.
Excuse the side trip. She's adorable, isn't she?
Kids, man.
Yes. Well,
we can't mess up. We can't mess up putting kids on a channel.
Well, and she's 2, and she's absolutely. Hang on, just a minute, Parker.
Okay.
I need your help.
That's okay.
All right. So back to what is LTS? So
what is LTS?
Jenkins has a weekly release and a long-term support release. The long-term support release, LTS, is run about every 12 weeks. We select a baseline release from the weekly releases that has good ratings, looks like a good stable base. Then we backport a few later changes onto that baseline and release it as an LTS. So 2.346 was selected as the baseline. We then spent several weeks checking it to be sure it was good and stable, finding fixes that we had to apply, and we created 2.346.1 as the LTS for that baseline. That will then continue with 4 weeks later, another release, 4 weeks after that, another release, so .2 and .3, each providing a little bit more for that LTS baseline. Then, after that 12-week period has elapsed, we'll do it again.
Okay, so we've got all the cuteness out of the way. We've got all of our normal things out of the way. Do you want to go close your door? I know your door was still open.
Oh, yes, thank you. That's good. Please, I will.
Okay, I'll keep going here for just a second. So as Mark's getting his door closed, there were so many changes in this 346 release. And as we get into this and start looking at the notes, this is going to be fairly intense. So are you ready, Mark?
I'm ready, Darren. Let's do it.
Okay, so do we want to start here with just this? Where do you want to start on 346? Do you want to do the since 346, which means that meant anything from 346 forward got backported into the .1?
I think we should, and I'd even say let's take the security advisory first, if you're okay.
First.
So click, because many people need to know, hey, what's happening in this security advisory? And why should they heed what's in the security advisory? So just scrolling downwards a little bit, Darren, gives a hint how much was in this particular security advisory. And now if we look at the very topmost one, that descriptions, multiple XSS vulnerabilities, that one already says, oh, wow, look at this. There are multiple security issues described here and issues that were found in Jenkins 2.332.3 and earlier, which would allow an attacker to inject HTML and JavaScript into Jenkins' UI. That's unhealthy and dangerous because then people can do all sorts of things acting as you. Cross-site scripting is really bad. So what the security team has done is implemented those fixes, and that's why we get 332.4, 346.1, and 356. 356? Oh, yeah, it is 356. I said 357 earlier. My mistake. 357 is next week. We'll talk about that later.
Yes, because then there's another twist with 357.
There is, exactly. There's a lot going on. So cross-site security, cross-site scripting fixes. Good. Now let's go to the next one, Darren. A timing discrepancy. Oh, security is multi-leveled, multifaceted, and multi-aspect. This is a fun one. If I enter a username that is invalid, then the system did not require the same amount of time to check the password as if I had entered a valid username, which meant a timing attack was possible. So by giving an invalid username, it was faster than if I gave a valid username. And that timing attack is actually quite a well-known attack to help you learn things about a system. Oh, I know username X is invalid, therefore I'll try no more attacks on its password. I know username Y is valid, I'll try more password attacks. So timing discrepancies, again, this is, wow, I'm glad we have a security team because this one's a piece of work.
Yep. Okay, next one. Which one do you want to go to next? Because again, let me go back to the top. There's a long list.
There are, and we're actually only going to cover 4 or 5 of these, and then we're going to stop, because what I want to do is talk to the core ones and then to 2 or 3 that are in plugins.
Okay.
So this view fragment access, relatively minor in my thinking, because if you look at the bottom, in the info section, it says, as of publication, the Jenkins security team is unaware of any vulnerable view fragment across the plugin ecosystem. The way I interpret that is they're being conservative and careful, like we like security teams to be sure that someone can't exercise this thing, but there's no known case where it is being exercised. Now, the next one down is the one that, and it's the next 2. Cross-site scripting in JUnit. The JUnit plugin has 295,000 installations. Okay, so it's on almost every Jenkins controller in the whole world. So when we have a vulnerability in that plugin, we care very deeply about it. Again, it's cross-site scripting, and in this case, the cross-site scripting is a description of a test result, which means that if a JUnit test author were to inject some malicious HTML into the test result, it might be on your page. I talk about multi-layer, multifaceted. Yeah, this one's a fascinating one. So upgrade your JUnit plugin. The next one, pipeline input step, again, this one's only installed on 275,000 installations as opposed to the 295,000. But it's another one where we don't want users to be able to bypass the security checks in that plugin. Upgrade those two plugins for sure. The other security advisories, yes, if you're using a vulnerable plugin, you should upgrade it. And the system will tell you if you're using a vulnerable plugin. So I'm not overly worried about it. Really, if you're told it's vulnerable, upgrade the plugin. The security team's very serious about helping you keep a secure Jenkins controller.
Let's talk about this one section right here.
Yes.
There was under this stored cross-site scripting. There's a block called out here, and just in case people are using any of these plugins, as this was published yesterday, there's no fixes for these. So how do these plugins show up if they are installed on a system?
Good question. So if I've got a plugin installed that has a known vulnerability, I will get a warning from Jenkins that plugin is there, and it will say there's a known security vulnerability. The warning will appear in the top right-hand corner right next to my username. And it'll be usually in a yellow color. It depends on your theme, but it will be in a color that hints to you something's exceptional here. However, your only choice typically then is to find a way to not depend on that plugin so that you can uninstall it. Or you could adopt the plugin and fix it yourself.
Okay. That last part is very key because
It is.
if you can fix it, please fix it. Okay, so those are the security advisory items. Are we done with this?
We are. I think
Okay.
just to remind people, when you get a security advisory from the Jenkins project, heed it. Take action.
Okay. Looking back here now, where do you want to start? Do you want to start on the LTS side or the backported side?
Let's go down to the LTS side now, the notable changes since 2.332.4. Because that very topmost one, well, you look at the list of, it says modernize form components and Jenkins UI. Look at the number of pull requests that are expressed there, right? There are 10 or 12 different pull requests that were part of this single line description. The Jenkins UI has had a major improvement in its look and feel. And I think it'd be fun for us, Darren, if we took a look at that and let's talk about them side by side.
All right. So I just happen to have some sitting right here, as if we'd planned this.
As if.
Sort of as if. We'll see. We did it 5 minutes before we did it, so hey. But it's here. All right. On the left is, I think I did 332.4. I either did .3 or .4. I don't remember looking at the screen. And this is 346.1.
Right. Now, already, corners are a little more rounded on the boxes on the right compared to the ones on the left, right? A little more rounded. Notice that the positioning that Keep Me Signed In has moved so that your navigation is more natural for tab navigation if you tab through Keep Me Signed In before you press the sign in, rather than pressing sign in and then realizing, oh, I should have said keep me.
For the people putting in questions, thank you for putting the questions in. We'll get to those. Let us get through a little bit more, and we'll come over to the questions. So if you have questions, go and put your questions in. That would be
Oh, yeah.
great.
Thank you for the questions. Thanks very much. Notice now, already, Darren, you just did it. Click into that username field. Notice the nice extra box around that to show you as a user, hey, look, you're typing field in this field here. Enter your username here,
Okay.
because we're going to need to log in eventually anyway.
Yep. All right. So I did that. I tab, and then there would be sign in. But now let's do this on the old one.
Right. And on the old one, oops, no, not nearly the same good hints about Where are we? So now let's go ahead and sign in, I think.
Sign in. Oh, I probably timed out. There we go. Do. Hey, it's running local, so. Okay, almost there. Now this is going to be weird because...
Yeah, because they're narrow screens.
I'm narrow screened.
That's okay. We can always widen. But already on the narrow screens, we see first very quick views of some significant changes. So topmost piece of the screen, notice the new item icon, the people icon, the build history icon. On the left, they were colored PNGs or colored GIFs. So they were color images, but they were fixed size rasters. So if you would increase the size of the screen, they tended to get grainy or tended to be, and they didn't work real well with theming.
Right.
Whereas on the right-hand side, what we have is scalable vector graphics that are ready to be sized at whatever size is needed, and they continue to retain their sharpness and their look even as you change screen size. So that transition from on the left, left PNGs and GIFs to on the right, SVG, is helping the user experience.
Okay. I also want to call out the breadcrumb. This is the one that your eyes drawn to, but notice how the font has also changed.
Oh, right.
Just in general.
Well, and as you hovered over it, you'll watch that the drop downs and whatnot are still there. So it's retained its drop down menus. It's got all the facilities that were there before with a little better layout for you.
Yep. Where do you want to go to next?
So I was tempted to look at the plugin manager just as another way of highlighting, hey, what are some major changes that we can see?
Okay. Manage plugins and we can also see here, just taking a look at system configuration, it's all the not grayscale, but grayscale images,
right?
For lack of a better term.
It's the SVG. The SVG
Yeah.
symbols are being used, so the scalable vector graphics symbols are being used, and that gives us again a consistent look and a consistent feel.
Yep. Okay. Now this was the old one. I couldn't install this plugin. Let's go to available, I guess.
Sure.
Be the best one, or do you want to do installed?
Either is fine. Let's take a look at both of them for now, and we'll talk through them. So notice the strong and dominant position of the search box on the right-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that placement is that primary interface for most users who interact with plugins is they're using a search-based system where they're saying, I need a plugin that does this, or I need a plugin that has that capability. And so they'll type a word. Mm-hmm. With the previous placement where it was in the top right-hand corner, it was tough for them to see visually, oh, that's the place where I need to enter my field. It's just not as obvious. Placing it right above the search results has made it better for the user.
Okay. Anything else?
Well,
that was on this one?
I think this one, that's great. Let's go on to the next.
Okay.
And let's try installed.
All right.
And here, if I remember correctly, things are largely the same, right? So once again, we've got the easier to understand. Enabled and disabled is a very big, nice sliding checkbox, right? Mm-hmm. It's really clear. This is either on or off. And the uninstall link is that red X on the right, very clear indicator.
Yep.
The up for adoption banner that's below the Apache is a reminder. Oh, hey, I got a plugin that's looking for somebody to adopt it. So good things here. That I think covers the predominant changes in the plugin manager. So let's go back and take a look at the next things.
Okay. What is that?
I'd say let's look at new item.
Okay. New item. Come on. There we go.
And
okay.
Similar sense, but notice that the stronger highlight on the text on the right, and if you click into the item name field, you'll see that the field is highlighted. Standard highlighting to tell us, oh, I'm in that field now.
Okay.
Now let's go back and let's look at more things.
Okay.
So maybe let's take a look at a Actually, from this place, let's create a new job.
Okay.
So pick one and...
Do you want to do pipeline first?
Sure.
Or do you want to
pipeline's a
freestyle?
great, either is fine. Pipeline is great. We'd prefer people do pipeline, so let's do pipeline.
Okay. So there's pipeline there, and I'm going to say old pipe here. And there we go. All right.
Okay, notice the better spacing on the right-hand side. It's, okay, you've actually got, click one of the checkboxes on the right. Okay, nice, visible. Do the same on the left. Okay, I like that bigger checkbox on the right. I like the higher visibility. It just helps me in my interactions. Now scroll further down.
Okay.
And we see that, all right, the layout, it's pretty much the same.
So it's a little more open. Actually,
It is.
a lot more open.
Right, and
So-
it's intentionally so, right? By making it more open, it's easier for me as a human being reading it to detect the differences between the various lines and to realize, oh, there's something going on here.
This is like one on the left. Sorry to everybody prior to 346. This is like watching or going through one of those PowerPoint presentations to where it's 75 points on a single slide.
Right.
And there's only like 20 points on the slide, right? That's what it feels like.
Exactly. The density is so high on the left. It's a nice positive that the density is decreased on the right. Yep.
You said that much more politely than I did. Okay. What else?
That covers this page for me.
Okay.
And yes, we've already seen multiple times that the rounded edges on tables.
Actually, there is one more thing. There is one more thing here.
Okay.
Notice how advanced moved.
Oh, right. Yes, good point.
So everything that used to be over on the right has now shifted left.
Correct. And that's an intentional shift for the benefit of those of us who are dealing with narrower screens or devices that have the phrase I've heard is responsive, where the device is much narrower. I could be on my phone, etc. And it's just, I like having things on the left-hand edge.
Yeah, I mean, right now I've narrowed both of these down to as narrow as it will be. And, I mean, it's not miserable, but this is also just a standard pipeline and not multi-branch or not something else to where it can get really ugly really fast.
Right. Well, and it's a nice improvement for user experience for the user. Is it breathtaking? Is it the end all be all? No, but it's a nice improvement.
Yep, it's an incremental improvement.
Exactly.
Okay, where do we go to next?
I think really that's a good set for the UI changes. Oh, okay, no, we've got to do one more. We have to, well, no, we can't because you don't have an agent defined. I made one contribution to Jenkins core for this release. I fixed a table layout in one case. So just me bragging. Let's go on to the next.
No, I can show it to you. I mean, even though I don't have an agent, I still have an agent. And it is.
Oh, that's true. So if you, on this page, if you do a, let's see, is it, no, actually, because the thing that I fixed has to do with the remote connection. So it's not visible on the default agent, on the built-in agent.
Never mind. Okay.
No problem. That's just, I was glad to be able to make a small contribution.
Okay. So next.
Yeah, so the things that are sort of on my mind next are key features that were added, like we've added new capabilities to configuration as code, that configurable views can be set. And then down at the bottom of this list of changes, there are two items that I think are fun to note. Jenkins now supports Java 17. All right, really cool. No more you have to use a special parameter to do it. It just supports Java 17. We've been really impressed. The other is, in that last item, add Alpine-based JDK 17 Docker image, we also improved all the Alpine images to no longer include the GNU libc. And if you look that one up, exactly, there you go. So what that means is one of the things that people like about Docker images with the Alpine-based image is that they're small. Mm-hmm. We had a problem that the JDK we prefer, Eclipse Temurin, required a different libc than was naturally included by Alpine. So we were ending up with their libc plus the GNU libc in order to do Java. Well, Eclipse Temurin improved their distribution so that no longer does it require GNU libc. It uses Alpine's libc, and by using Alpine's libc, we could drop the GNU C library. Now, there's a reason we made a note of this in the upgrade guide, because some users may have inadvertently been using packages that depended on that C library.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. So and I love the guidance on this, the recommended solutions are in order of preferences. First, do not run jobs on the controller. Therefore, you shouldn't need Node.js on the controller. You shouldn't need a copy of Maven on the controller. You shouldn't need a copy of all sorts of things. So first, don't run jobs on the controller. Okay, if you must then run jobs on the controller, and you've got to use things that depend on glibc, use Debian or Debian Slim, because Alpine is not intended to include the GNU C library. It really has its own library, Muscle, and that library is small for good reasons.
Right. Okay. Back to this.
Yeah. So, thanks.
What else here?
Well, so there were some things that I liked about, if you look 3 rows down in that section, reject connections from agents with unsupported remoting versions. One of the problems we've seen from some users has been that they use an inbound agent. And the challenge with an inbound agent is it's executing a jar file on the agent that someone had to put there. And inevitably, some of those are so old that they were put there years ago and they just happen to keep working, whether or not there are really great reasons to keep it so old. We've now, to the benefit of the users, said, look, if there is a remoting version on an inbound request that is so old we can't support it, we're just going to reject that connection. And so be aware that if you have agents that are running and with this release, suddenly they no longer connect, go read the upgrade
probably
guide.
This. Yeah.
And the reason is, right, be sure that you run your agents.
Yeah, and this is the section from the upgrade guide that goes into it. In fact, it will show this agent is offline because Jenkins failed to launch the agent process on it.
Right. And that message is your hint, oh, okay. Now, there is an escape hatch, and you see in the red text there, if you really have to have it, maybe you've got some old specialty hardware that can only run old this or old that, then you can actually turn on this escape hatch. But in general, you should not be running outdated remoting versions. Keep them up to date.
Yep. And if you've never taken a look at the version node monitors plugin, this is I have this running on both of the Jenkins controllers I have running inside my house. Yes, I have Jenkins running inside my house. And it helps. Now, most of I have one agent that is a Windows-based agent, so I do an inbound TCP connection from that one. Everything else for me is SSH. So those automatically get upgraded when I reboot and do things. So,
and I agree wholeheartedly with the love affair with the version node monitors plugin. I've got it installed on my controllers, and it's a great initial warning if I've got something that isn't quite right on my infrastructure. It will tell me things like, oh, your remoting version's too old, or oh, here's the version of Java you're running on this remote. And that can be a red flag to me as an administrator. Oh, I'm running the wrong version of Java on that agent compared to my controller. It's been happy, but the project doesn't support that configuration. I should get that fixed.
Yep. The version node monitors plugin is a very nice single pane of glass to understand the differences of your JDKs or your JVMs between controller and agents, and also the remoting versions. That's really that's all it shows. But having all of that in a single place is very, very nice.
Excellent. Yep.
Okay. Let's go back over to the notes. Let's see. Is there anything else we wanted to do here? You said config as code. A lot of cleanup. Really, the big thing here was the UI changes.
It was. And And I've got to take us on one more side trip, Darren, on
Okay.
the UI changes. This one doesn't need any page change. It's rather a place where we're grateful to a group that helped us make the changes. So during April of 2022, She Code Africa provided 7 women who helped the Jenkins project with various activities, and 2 of those women worked on updating the Jenkins screenshots, so that Jenkins documentation on www.jenkins.io now has updated screenshots. For instance, let's see, one example, go to installing. Oh yeah, maybe pipeline may also have it. If we picked the Linux one, I think is a good choice. Just scroll down a little bit. Let's see if there's a screenshot in here that we've updated.
Oh, wait,
Okay, there's a video.
There we go.
Yeah, and so that one didn't need an update. Keep going,
Okay.
though, because I think there are more that did. Nope, sorry, this page didn't have one. But what happened was we had these brand new contributors to open source who were introduced to the Jenkins project. For many of them, this was the first time they had run Jenkins. And as first-time users, we asked them, hey, help us update these screenshots. That meant they had to navigate to those pages, take the screenshot, submit the pull request, endure the code review, and watch it be merged. It was a great experience. We loved what She Code Africa Contributhon did for us.
Is there anything you want to call out in the backports?
Not really. I think that's a good choice.
So I think here, the remove SSH from, so if you're doing a fresh installation now, the SSH plugin is not going to be installed automatically.
Right, and that previously it was an offered alternative, but it was not naturally installed.
Right.
And what we realized is it really doesn't make much sense to even offer it in that first-time user experience. So it's been removed.
Okay. We've talked a little bit about Java 17 is nicely supported now, especially through the container images for both Alpine and Debian.
Mm-hmm.
But we were talking about, is there anything else, actually, before I get to that, is there anything else in the upgrade guide we need to take a look at? So we talked about SVGs.
Well, and SVGs, I think, needs more conversation. So if you're okay with a brief pause here, let's take a brief pause here. So this SVG icon upgrade means that some older plugins may not be fully prepped for this, and they may show a broken icon. And what there is on the Jenkins documentation site, Darren, if you'll open the blog page in a separate tab, we can go read Kevin's blog post, Svg Icon Migration. So what Kevin notes is that, hey, this upgrade touched many, many plugins. Mm-hmm. And there's a large enough plugin base that it couldn't reasonably touch them all. So in the middle of that second paragraph in background, it says a tracking spreadsheet lists plugins. Users can open that sheet and it enumerates the list of plugins and their current condition. So that may be, hey, here's a plugin that had an issue, we fixed it, and it's been released. Or here's a plugin that hasn't been updated, but the pull request is pending. Or the pull request hasn't even been submitted. So users and administrators can look at their list of plugins, safety check this tracking spreadsheet, and say, okay, is my plugin affected by this? Now that I love that he put a nice image there, abandoned plugin to be discussed, because this is a very real situation where someone created a plugin 5 years ago. It solved their need. They were grateful for it, but they didn't need to do anything more with it, and they stopped maintaining it. Well, if no one else picks it up, if no one else works on it, it will just be that way. And in this case, if you're using one of these abandoned plugins, your choices are, should I stop using it? Should I just accept that the icon is broken? Or should I adopt it?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Let's go back to the upgrade notes, make sure we didn't miss anything. JNR got removed.
Right, and this one we think will be relatively minor, in the sense that we've already upgraded. Be sure that you upgrade your plugins when you upgrade Jenkins.
Right.
If you follow that pattern, upgrade plugins when you upgrade Jenkins, you'll be covered if you're using PAM authentication or the file leak detector. Now, the Maven repository scheduled cleanup plugin, it's old enough, you should just stop using it.
Okay. You want to talk about the self-signed certificate?
This one's kind of an obscure one. This one is a relatively uncommon but valid use case. So some Jenkins users have chosen to process SSL inside the Jenkins Java process. And Java's pretty good at SSL. Most of us, like me, I prefer to let Nginx or Apache do the SSL processing for me because I just like the notion of somebody's C code tightly optimized as opposed to Java code. But if you choose to run SSL processed inside the Jenkins Java process, then there are some slight changes you have to do if you're using a self-signed certificate. Now, most people should not use self-signed certificates. If you're using SSL, just go get a real certificate. Pay the money, it's worth it, or use Let's Encrypt and get it for free.
Yep. Okay. And that's pretty much it because we've already covered the other two items that were here. Okay. So going back to the changelog, we talked about 17 being available, but 357 shows up next week.
Right. And so 357 is a different story, right? 357 next week will be the first Jenkins version that requires Java 11 as its minimum Java version. You won't be able to run 357 with Java 8.
So let's just look at it this way. If I click on, I'm just going to click on past releases, this shows up in a number of different places. But what I'm expecting to see next week is a new line item here that says maybe not on this page, but
actually on this page. Good story, because we have a pull request for this specific page. Good story.
So it'll be 2.357, whatever, what are we, 2022-06 or a B07.
Yep.
Or newer, it'll be Java 11.
Correct.
Or Java 17?
Or Java 17.
Okay.
Right.
So the next question a lot of people have is, well, wait, I still need Java 8 to build my stuff. That's okay. But it's going to take a little bit of work, right?
Yeah, and for me, I think it's not even much work. Jenkins wants to run on a particular Java version. However, Jenkins can invoke whatever Java version and whatever Java tool you want. So if you need Java 7, if you need Java 8, if you need Java 15, it can invoke any one of those for you. Maybe you're experimenting with the latest things on Java 18, or maybe you're still doing something on Java 7. Who knows? In any case, Jenkins can call the tool of your choice and use that tool to perform your builds, whatever Java version you want. So don't let your need for a specific Java version cause you to hesitate to choose to use Java 11 to run Jenkins.
Yeah. That's it. If you're not ready to go to Java 11 for everything, that's cool. Mm-hmm. But starting next week in the Jenkins weeklies only, you will have to have Java 11. Now, what that does mean is we're now on the path to where Java 11 is going to be required for the next LTS coming in September-ish.
That's
right?
Correct. Right. So we use this nice pattern of start with a change in the weekly, allow it to percolate through the weekly, allow us to get lots of experience with the weekly across multiple versions. Then we pick a base of the weekly as the LTS, test that base even further. So we're getting this into the weekly stream. We'll spend 4 or 6 weeks working with it in weekly to be sure that everything is working the way we expect, and then we'll choose an LTS baseline, and that will be the thing that we deliver in the September-ish LTS.
Right. And the reason why we're saying ish is this one came out late in June, and depending on date math and other things, when the next release is, because this release was a little bit delayed.
Right. We took an extra several weeks in order to allow us to stabilize this release to be sure that it was ready to go. I'm actually quite proud of what the teams have done to make Jenkins very ready for users and reliable and compatible.
Yep. So with that in mind, What else do we have here? We can answer some questions, or is there anything else we need to cover?
Let's answer questions.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the top of questions. So forgive me, Sebastian. Thank you so much. It was sort of weird. I'll put it that way.
Hey, come on! I was so pleased to be. Just so everyone's aware, I wrote the nomination for Darren. It was a great treat to go through and realize all the things that Darren does in all the places he does them. It's not just a congratulations; it's a well-deserved. Absolutely.
And I have to put this one up. This was when your granddaughter was in Jenkins Future. Okay, so with this question from Sebastian, did you think about going to Jenkins 3 at some point just to get easier version numbers, similar to Linux kernel? This is always a good question.
It is a very good question. It's a question that's been discussed multiple times in the Jenkins community. On the one hand, simpler version numbers give some benefit. On the other hand, Jenkins evolves incrementally, and because of the incremental evolution, if we switch from 2 to 3, we may cause people to misunderstand, thinking that we've made some breaking change that causes them to have to slow down their process of adopting Jenkins. And so for us right now, by using Jenkins 2 dot, we avoid people being confused who are expecting a semantic versioning system. Now, realistically, Jenkins at its heart does not semantic version, right? There are many things where plugins may use a 3-part version number, but in fact are not terribly great at always actually applying the semantic versioning rules. So our experience was changing the major version number from 1 to 2 many years ago actually caused confusion because it was still an incremental change. It was significant incremental change, but it was incremental change. And we continue to do these incremental changes because continuous delivery and continuous integration argues for incremental changes. So right now, at least, the story is still, hey, let's just stay with 2 because we don't want to have to explain to people why we migrated from 2 to 3. I know Linus...
When there's no reason to, right?
Well, and Sebastian's point is valid.
Yeah.
Linus chose to roll the Linux kernel from 2 to 3, and his answer basically was, just because I said so. That was his story, and it's a perfectly reasonable thing to do when you are the person in charge.
making the decision. Right.
Absolutely. But at this point, the community for Jenkins hasn't yet seen anything that would compel us to make that change. And I'm great with it going as it is.
Yep. And sort of a follow-on to that was, are there any breaking changes that require going to .4 instead of the new .1?
And there, I think, yes, the SVG Icon Migration is one where you might say, I've got this old, very, very important plugin where the images will be wrong, and my users will be outraged if the images are wrong. You might then need to choose the .4 instead of the .1. There are other cases where you might say, oh, I'm using the Alpine image, and I was building on the controller, and I have some tool that must have GNU libc. Okay, then while you fix that problem, and you should fix that problem, while you fix that problem, you want to use .4. That buys you a little bit of time to fix it, and then you make the transition to .1 after you fix the problem.
Let's see here. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to take. I might skip some of these, so please don't. For people that ask questions, if I skip it, I'm skipping it because I can't give a straight answer, and I'm just not going to give you a fluff or a lie. So I'd rather take it back. We will take these. We'll take these. What are these comments? And we'll process them through and figure out, okay, how can we better answer these instead of just off the top of our head. So certain things we can. Sebastian, one more time here. The login screen is going to break password manager autotype sequences.
Well, it depends, right? It depends on what your
Some
autotype is dependent, right?
Right.
If your autotype, most autotypes are usually dependent on finding an object inside the page, and they find it by locating it in the DOM. And if that's the case, I would expect them to be undamaged.
Okay.
However,
there's one more here. So Metal571 said upgraded the deployment yesterday, and the login screen still works with Bitwarden. So that's good.
Right, which is hinting.
But that's Bitwarden, right?
Right, And that tool is probably using elements of the DOM in order to find components on the page. And that's a good way to do it with web pages. So it makes sense that they would do it that way.
Yeah. Okay. Let's answer this question. Is there an easy way to package Jenkins agent jars with a Java 11 binary?
Well, since the Java, there really isn't that I know of, because the Java has to be called separately. And so, yeah, I guess you could create a self-extracting executable that would unpackage Java and unpackage the agent jar and then run them both. It just feels complicated when most of the time I want Java on that agent already. So I'm sure it's possible, because self-extracting archives are a real thing. I'm just not sure that it's practical or beneficial to you.
Yeah. Let's go back to another from Metal 571. You mentioned earlier that the new configurable views can be set using JCast. Can you expand on that? Do you have a way to? Do you have an example of that somewhere?
I don't. The simplest way to talk to it is that what this says is I can define what the user's default view should be in configuration as code. Previously, I couldn't configuration as code define which one should be my default. We already had the ability to do views in configuration as code. This now lets me set, and I think, Darren, if you were to bring up the changelog, we can look at it, we can find it there, and we can go read a little more detail.
Okay, let's see here. The changelog. Where am I? Okay. So.
All right, so look for configuration as code.
That's site warnings. Okay, here we go. Allow setting a user's.
There it is. Allow setting a user's primary view via configuration as code. That's the thing. And so in that line item, there are the items that describe it, but it really is just defining the user's primary view.
Okay. Nothing more, nothing less.
No, because view definition was already available in configuration as code.
Okay. All right. So with all that in mind, I think here's the next big few things. If you are still running your Jenkins controllers and your agents, let me rephrase that. If you're using anything less than Java 11 to run your Jenkins controller process or your agent processes, now is the time to get those upgraded to Java 11. We are now on the 10 to 12 weeks from that being required.
That's correct, right. And that is, this now is the time to get to Java 11. Now you may choose to evaluate Java 17 even. Java 11, we've been running on ci.jenkins.io for something over 2 years. Yeah. So we're quite confident that Java 11 is a great place to run a production Jenkins instance. It runs well, it's well behaved. We were pleased to hear from the Eclipse Foundation. I just saw a tweet recently. They saw dramatic improvements in memory use on their Jenkins instance when they switched from Java 8 to Java 11. I was really pleased. It's like, oh, that's a good story. Thank you. So the Eclipse, the folks on whom we depend, right? We depend on Eclipse Temurin, and they depend on Jenkins to evaluate change requests and pulls to the JDK. So it's a nice virtuous circle.
The thing to keep in mind is if you've done a lot of memory flag settings in 8, those change dramatically when you go to 11.
Right.
And there is a knowledge base article on CloudBees, I don't have the link for it, that goes through, if you did this in 8, this is what you do in 11. It's not hard, but that is the big change.
And they are distinctly different, right? I mean, Java 8's memory management is different than Java 11. So it's worth it to people who are running larger Jenkins instances to look at memory settings, and CloudBees runs some of the largest, and it's a great way to look and use their knowledge to figure out how to configure your system. I personally am hesitant to run 17, at least on my daily driver, but I do have an instance that pulls in the weeklies. That one's getting upgraded to 17 probably tomorrow. And Darren, I think you just described the conservative and healthy approach for people running in production. I prefer 11, but I'm going to adopt 17 in my experiments place, because I want to know about it before I have to bring it into production. And I think that behavior is a good behavior for everybody. Use 11 in production and get 17 rolled somewhere so that you can toy with it and see, does it have any problems that surprise me? Because eventually, even 11 will go away.
Right, and that was going to be my next statement is if we were to take a look back at where was I? Where do I want to go? I want to go to here. If we were just to take a quick look at this, it was 2 years to go from 7 to 8. It was another 2 years to add in 11.
Right.
And now it will have been
3 years.
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. We don't count these last 2 years.
COVID was a time compressor.
Yeah, but if you think about it, we went from 54 to 154 to now 357.
Right.
So it took a little bit longer, but it would not surprise me that in 2 years from, say, September, 11 goes away.
Right. Well, and
I can't remember what the EOL on 11 is.
Yeah, it's certainly published, right? I think it's sometime in 2024, but it's a reminder that most Jenkins controllers from most organizations are long-lived things, and it's to your benefit to think a little longer. When I started my first Jenkins controller, I thought I was going to do it for a few days, and it turned out that it ran for years, and that particular controller is probably still providing services to a team long after I'm gone, etc. It's that nature. So good for us to think ahead and plan for and explore the next step for our Jenkins controller.
Yep. I think that's it.
That's it for me. Thanks, Darren.
Okay.
Java 11's coming.
Java 11's coming. If you're brave and you have a scratch area, try 17.
Yep.
Again, you don't have to be at 11 today, but in September-ish, you will be. Now, when is the next LTS release? For not like the big one, but like when's our .2 coming?
Yeah, so I'll have to look at the .2 calendar. There was some discussion because of the delay. It could be that it's in 3 weeks. So it could be in 3 weeks. It could be in 4, and I don't know which. All
right. So 3 to 4 weeks, we'll be back. And if you're still with us here live, thanks for hanging out all the way till the end. We went really long today, more than normal. Give us a thumbs up before you leave. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. If you're watching the replay, thanks for watching till the end. And we will talk to you again in, 3 to 4 weeks.
Right.
All right. Thanks. Everybody have a great rest of your day.